The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to the Fandotech Friday 15, Mission Technical Reconnaissance. If you have any questions during the presentation, type them into your question window. This week, our presenter, Craig Sampson, that's me, is discussing managed firewalls. Let's go ahead and get started. So first up today, I want to talk about what is a firewall. I think we may know what it is. Pictured here, we've got a little stack of different models of Sonic Walls. Sonic Wall is a vendor who provides excellent firewalls, and this is the vendor that we're currently using here at Fandotech. Other vendors that carry firewalls similar to these are, of course, Cisco and a few others. So you might notice that, so what is a firewall? There's these little gray boxes we see here. Not very interesting to look at. They're gray, they've got lots of blinking lights, and of course lots of wires plugging in and out of there. It's essentially your core networking device. It's a gatekeeper to your network. And I'm going to go ahead and talk about what your network is. It's things like workstations, servers, phone systems, printers, etc. Okay, so, that sounds great, but, we often hear something like, I'm a small to medium-sized business. Who's trying to attack me? I only have 10 or 40 or 70 employees, and nothing that anyone would want to steal. So why would I need this thing? So we'll go on and tackle that question. One of the reasons you might need this are state and federal regulations, such as the Massachusetts CMR 201, it's 201 CMR 17, which is essentially related to Massachusetts patient medical records, protecting residents of Massachusetts. Any companies that do business with Massachusetts or have clients that are in Massachusetts are subject to this. There's also HIPAA, which is applicable everywhere. That's protecting your medical data for privacy reasons. There's also, if you're in the finance industry, things like the Sarbanes-Oxley and Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act of 1999 that protects that kind of data, and PCI, which is essentially a 2006 Consumer Protection Act. So you may be subject to some of these state and federal regulations. Also, possibly you're not. So we'll go on and look at the you're not so subject. Well, you're always subject to other things, such as external threats to your network. These threats really fall into two categories. The first are hackers. This is the classic group of evil people that are out there to break in and steal your information. If you had credit card or customer data stored in your network, they might be in there to steal that. They might also break into your network, attempt to destroy things that you have, perhaps delete your file share, or harm other things on your network. So the hackers is one class of external threat. The second class are what I'm going to call exploiters. Exploiters essentially break in and use resources for nefarious purposes. They're not there to destroy anything. They kind of want to sneak in so you don't find out that they're in there. And they want to use your resources for their own purposes. What they do is they turn some of your resources into what are known as zombies. They would basically perhaps take over your mail server and then use it to spam people. If you're not aware of that, that could have terrible consequences for you. So those are kind of the classic external threats that establish why you would need a firewall, even if you're a small to medium business. Furthermore, there are internal threats. These are definitely more benign. However, this is what we call an internal misuse of resources. Basically, overall, they're going to have the same effects as those external threats, being detrimental to your network. This would be your employees, say, using Facebook, Twitter, other social networking, or more resource-using things like streaming through Pandora and YouTube while on the job. Nice thing about the new firewall models It used to be in the years past that the only thing you could do was block a network port with your firewall. And that network port might have been, one of other numbers besides 80. 80 is your web network port. And so if you wanted to browse the web, you needed to leave network port 80 open. But today, pretty much everything runs through network port 80. So those old firewalls are not going to be able to help you in blocking some of these internal threats. So the new firewalls give us the ability to control all of this at a more granular level. And I'm going to get into that in some more detail. Another issue, and this relates definitely to those of you who may be business owners or managers, are things, basically a loss of productivity. And this is what happens when you have those internal and external threats operating somewhere in your network. Overall, this impacts the performance, the speed of your network, and your ability to get information in and out of the web. So that's going to give you a drop in employee productivity. If you're hosting zombies and your employees are streaming from YouTube, they're on Facebook, they're playing Farmville or Mafia Wars, all that's going to slow down your network. And also, one of the bad things that can happen, especially with those zombie machines, like a mail server that's spamming people, is that your domain may get blacklisted. Now, if that happens, all of your outgoing email is going to be blocked. Restoration of your right to send the email again may take half a day, or even longer. This can get you into quite a nightmare tangle, and during that period, you won't be able to send any email out of your network. So, it's definitely something, obviously, you're going to want to protect against. A loss of a day of outbound email could seriously affect the bottom lines of smaller businesses. So you definitely need a better, firewall for better control of the resources that you are paying for. You pay that bill every month. You expect to get the service that you paid for, not have it, drained away by employees and other hackers and zombies on your system. So, I want to talk a little bit about where your productivity is going, and I've given you some hints so far. This illustration here shows us the entire bandwidth that we have coming in. Maybe you're paying for DSL or you're paying for some live connection to the database, to the internet, and you're expecting to get a large throughput. So here's your pipe to the internet. And in it we see some slices. And this blue slice that you see here is basically, this would be users surfing YouTube. YouTube is, because it's a video, it's very bandwidth hungry. So if you have some employees busily surfing YouTube during the day, they're draining a good portion of your bandwidth right there that's not available for anything else. Then we go on and look at Pandora. This is another bandwidth-sucking tool. This one streams music. And of course, it's very popular with a lot of folks. And if you have, several people using your network to stream Pandora, they too are siphoning off your bandwidth that you're paying for. Another class here in red, appropriately, are adult sites. And of course, this is always forbidden at work, but yet people seem to still do it. And so they might be streaming adult content, or they may be looking at pictures. Not only is it probably not in compliance with your employee handbook, but of course this is also using up bandwidth on your network. Up here in blue, light blue in this case, we have Facebook. Now, a lot of businesses use Facebook, and it's a legitimate part of business. Here at Facebook, for instance, we have a Fandotech Facebook page. It's my job to keep that up to date, so I have to use Facebook. And almost all of our employees also have Facebook pages. And of course, we encourage our employees to utilize their Facebook pages to help us create a congenial Facebook environment for our company. So all that is within the purview of what we think is desirable. However, that's not how all people use Facebook. If you've been in there, you know very popular inside of Facebook is Farmville. There are others like Cityville and Mafia Wars. All these are also draining away your bandwidth. And the problem is, you legitimize Facebook as a place to go. So they go in there and they spend the afternoon playing Farmville. Of course, again, that's affecting your bottom line. They're not working. And, of course, they're using up your bandwidth. Very frustrating. And we see here it's a little sub-slice of Facebook. A lot of these other slices that we see here can be broken up in similar ways. There may be other applications that people are using that are legitimate within the company, but aspects of it are not legitimate. And so one of the nice things about firewalls is the ability to kind of filter out those sub-items. What we're left with here in the middle is what's available. And you see, once you take away all the misuse of your resources, what you're left with is basically just this little tiny green core of bandwidth. So from the point of view of the person doing real work, when they're trying to load web pages or download files that belong to the work, they're going to have very slow service. And the typical response, of course, is to blame your provider. Oh, our ISP is, throttling our bandwidth. But no, it turns out that it's your employees that are using it. Now, I don't want to vilify employees, of course. Again, these could be zombies. A zombie that's spamming, for instance. This is your mail server that's been hijacked by somebody, and it's sending out many thousands or millions of emails, will contribute to one of these slices here and eat up a vast portion of your network resource. So we don't always want to blame employees. There can be other things going on. So a firewall lets us prevent some of these things from happening. Classically, a firewall, as I said, can only block a port. But now, modern firewalls are able to more intelligently sniff inside every packet of data that enters your network. And what it does is it has a long list of filters, patterns to match against. So when it sees content that appears to be from Facebook, it examines the content against the known pattern of what Facebook looks like. And it may say, oh, this is actually something that's in disguise as Facebook, doesn't match the pattern. So we'll toss aside those packets and block them as invalid data. Similarly, it can say, oh, this is Facebook. Now let's look inside the packet, and we see that inside the packet is actually Farmville or Mafia Wars content. And so in those cases, it can actually permit only the Facebook content that does not include those. So you would be able to allow your employees to do what they need to do on social networks and still block them from the productivity wasting activities that they may secretly love and use throughout the day. And of course, as you do all this, as you set up a firewall, you would want to specify the types of filtration you need. And it's kind of a pitch for Fandotech when we work with clients where we manage their firewall. We go through them with them all of the types of allowed traffic that they would permit during the day. Not only can it be blocked overall, but it can be blocked by person or segment of your network. So you could say management has unbridled access to everything. They're permitted to go anywhere they want to for whatever their needs. But meanwhile, other employees are going to be content filtered. We will let them get to Facebook, but not Farmville. We'll let them go to Twitter, but we're not going to let them go to any adult sites or Pandora and so forth. So you're able to really be very granular in how you go about this. So I want to kind of close out by re-emphasizing why a managed firewall in particular, because you can just go out and buy a firewall. Usually what happens in that case is you buy it. You plug it in, you might play with it for a few minutes, and then you forget about it. And you forget about it until it dies or your internet goes down. All of a sudden you realize you have a problem, and then it may be too late to prevent something like blacklisting. The reality is that threats are always evolving. pretty much every day there are just apparently endless numbers of hackers with time on their hands. And what they do is they try to exploit known vulnerabilities. And when they find one, they publicize it through their nefarious little networks. And suddenly, there is a hole in your firewall that can be exploited by somebody. And that hole lets them get in and do things as we've described. So one of the things that a managed firewall gives you is that we stay on top of that. Essentially, this evolution changes every day, so it's constantly something that you have to stay on top of. And if you have a full-time job, that's probably not your job to monitor all that. That's something that we do here. We also, and I don't want to just make this a big pitch for Fandotech, but Fandotech does offer managed firewalls. And what we do is we provide the maintenance that goes with those managed firewalls. For instance, if the product needs service, that's taken care of. So also, if there are firmware updates, firmware is the software that runs on your router. Occasionally, the vendor will update that firmware. They may do it to address known vulnerabilities or to improve or optimize features on the system. So we monitor for firmware updates, and we patch the system as needed. Lastly, we also replace units. Let's say that there is a lightning strike and your unit is destroyed. We would come in and replace with the same model a new one. And another point of view is that basically these devices themselves are always evolving. And so there's a new one every couple years, essentially. There's always a new model. They want you to keep on the pipeline to success, if you will. And so we offer a 36-month replacement program. So every 36 months, we would install the newest model, which offers the newest level of protection, the newest speed standards, and so forth. So we're out of time, and so I want to kind of wrap up here today by thanking you for joining me. And if I didn't answer all of your questions, I'll circle back with you independently. This webinar will be available for viewing on our blog at blog.fandotech.com, on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Fandotech, and on SlideShare at slideshare.net/Fandotech. Join us next week for another Fandotech Friday 15 Tech Recon, where we'll be discussing the answers to the top 5 questions we receive in our Technical Assistance Center. I'm looking forward to that one. Register today by visiting blog.fandotech.com and clicking on the Friday 15 logo. This has been a presentation of Fandotech.